Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining today's virtual press conference for the launch of the Global Cruise Activist Network. We're going to start in a few minutes. If you could please mute yourself. And if you haven't already, rename your name to who you are and who you're with. To rename, you can press the participants button and then hit more next to your name and rename. Second, please mute yourself. And to speak, simply unmute your microphone if needed. Third, to see everyone's faces, click on the 9-dot square shape in the upper right corner to switch to gallery view. And finally, this event is being recorded, so please keep that in mind. Now let's go ahead and get started. It's 1 minute after the hour around the world. Hello and welcome again to the launch of the Global Cruise Activist Network. My name is Carla Hart and I'm in Juneau, Alaska. Along with dozens of Global Cruise Activist Network members and our supporters and allies from around the world, I'm proud to be joined by fellow moderators Jane DeMosto from Venice, Italy, Cara Sandys from Southampton, UK, Linda Clark from Cayman Islands, Mark Gardner from Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, and Dr. Christelle Blunden from Southampton, UK. Jane, you're muted. There we go.
We're going to start. Hello, everybody. We're going to start with a brief introduction of the Global Cruise Activist Network and the principles for responsible cruise tourism before inviting each of the network members who are present today to briefly introduce themselves. Once we finish the introductions, we'll open it up to questions. But before we start all this, does anybody have any questions at all about the process before we begin? Shout if you do. No. Okay. For our Global Cruise Alliance network leaders around the world, if you have a time conflict and you need to speak earlier rather than later, please let us know in the chat and we'll make adjustments. And another thing before we get started is I'd like to ask any members of the media to introduce themselves. If you're with a media outlet, could you please let us know in the chat, because it's hard to see 5 screens of you, that who you are and that you're here. Give your name, the location and the news outlet that you're with so that we can track you during the call. And thank you all so much for attending. Let's get started. Over to you, Linda.
Thanks, Jane. The Global Cruise Activist Network, or GCAN, is a newly formed global network of cruise port residents, civil society organizations, and labor and crime victim advocates that came together during the COVID-19 pandemic to demand no return to business as usual for cruising. For decades, the cruise industry's business model has depended on burning huge volumes of highly polluting fuel, dumping it in the ocean, underpaying its lowest paid workers, and avoiding labor, tax, environmental, and criminal laws. For decades, cruise ships have put the social, cultural, economic, public health, and environmental health of port communities at risk. For decades, cruise companies have failed to protect the health and safety of passengers and workers and have contributed to climate change. Cara, over to you.
Hi, I'm Cara in Southampton, that's in the UK. In response, advocates seeking justice both on board and ashore have come together to form the Global Cruise Activist Network. As a global network, we are aligned around the values of health, safety, security and conservation, and we want clean air, clean water and healthy, resilient communities. We want fair and just wages and working conditions for workers. And we want to protect wildlife and the climate.
Marg? Marg, are you there?
We might have lost Marg. I'm going to jump in
Here.
for
I'm
her.
here.
Oh, good, good.
I wasn't unmuted, that's all. You've lost me in the picture. My name is Mark Gardner. I'm from James Bay, Victoria, Canada. Despite our common cause and our commitment to think globally and to act locally, we are also diverse. Some of us are abolitionists, advocating degrowth and an end to the cruise industry. Some of us work to restrict cruise ships' size and frequency, and others call for reform, for the cruise industry to act more responsibly. We support individuals and communities' right to self-determination, to ban cruise ships entirely, to restrict or to limit them, or to push for their reform. All are welcome.
Hi, I'm Christelle Blunden from Southampton, UK. The Global Cruise Activist Network provides a forum for building relationships and alliances and taking collective action. Our focus is on organising, sharing information, skills and resources, and building a big tent coalition. Linda?
Yeah, I was on mute again. Now, before GCAN members introduce themselves, we wanted to announce the publication of our Principles for Responsible Cruise Tourism. GCAN members have developed the principles over the last few months, and they address the following 12 issue areas.
Self-determination of communities.
Economic impacts.
Cultural impacts.
Labour.
Climate change.
Air pollution.
Water pollution.
Monitoring and transparency.
Environment and biodiversity.
Public health.
Crime victims.
Worker repatriation.
These principles describe the future we want to see, and the global pandemic has created the opportunity to see it. We now have a unique opportunity to set the conditions for cruise ships returning. Our message is this: to resume operations, the cruise ship industry must become socially, environmentally, and economically responsible. This will require radical transformation in their business model and corporate cultures. The Global Cruise Activist Network's Principles for Responsible Cruise Tourism provides a roadmap for that transition. And in case you missed it, a link to the Principles for Responsible Cruise Tourism can be found in the press release and also on the new website.
Thank you, Jane. Now we're going to invite the GCAN members present to take a minute or less to introduce themselves and their issues. And I've got an order that we're going to go in, but we have members in hurricane paths and other exciting things taking their attention. So if any of you are online who really need to jump forward, please just put in the chat. We're going to start with Krista Thomas with Crew Only Stranded at Sea, and then go to Jane in Venice. Krista.
My name is Krista, and I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia. We began a group to unify and keep in communication with crew members who became stranded during the COVID pandemic when the industry went into its shutdown. It's been several months since crew members stopped working around March of 2020, and we still have several crew members are still out at sea awaiting repatriation from their companies, whether that be due to or government restrictions. There's also been a lot of discrepancy and controversy over what the cruise lines have done to try and get those crew members repatriated. And through that, we've become more involved in the labor issues on board because the crew members are not being paid. Those that are working in essential positions are being paid at basic wages, but it's not enough to sustain a living on. And those that are simply left on board because they do not have an avenue to get home are not being paid at all. We've seen crew members lose their houses. We've seen them lose family members. We've had crew members who have terminally ill spouses at home that they cannot get to. And this continues to be a persisting issue. Along with the human rights component, the working hours that they do take on in normal operations, and the retaliation that they have faced throughout this COVID crisis for speaking up, for trying to speak to media, for trying to fight for their rights and their repatriation. So we remain very involved and now join you with this in labor and human rights and repatriation being a part of the principles of responsible cruising.
Thank you very much, Krista. And we'll go now to Jane in Venice and next to Anna in Milan.
Hello again. I run an organization that's appropriately called We Are Here Venice. This year, over 500 ships and nearly 2 million passengers would have come to Venice. And as cruising restarts in Italy, the companies have chosen instead to use the Adriatic ports of Trieste and Ravenna, just for the time being. The Italian government has not yet fulfilled its commitment made years ago to solve the obvious problem of cruise ships in the city. The authorities have not done anything to reconcile the specific interests of workers, Venetian citizens, local businesses, and the environment, including flooding and climate change. Because of this, UNESCO might assign Venice and its lagoon to the list of World Heritage in danger. Our work focuses on collecting scientific research that's relevant to finding a real solution to cruise ships, not just in Venice, but also in the world.
Thank you, Jane. Anna in Milan, and then Cora in Copenhagen, Denmark, please.
Yes, hello, my name is Anna Giorometta. I'm from Citizens for Air in Milano, and we're members of a group, of an international group of NGOs fighting for the reduction of air pollution from ships. And we are really boosting for a more responsible shipping industry. We have seen in these past months shipping and cruise ships next to the windows of the cities of the Italian citizens in all the cities of Liguria and all around Italy, which we consider that it's really not responsible, unacceptable, and we are also very worried because the Italian cruise industry has been achieving the authorization to restart the cruise, which will be fully Italian because of the pandemia issue, which we believe that it's quite also not responsible at all to face the current situation, the health situation. So we are really expecting a change from the cruise companies that are with their steam and fumes just choking the citizens in the cities.
Thank you so much, Anna. I realize I'll just give you a brief highlight. We're going to go from Europe to Australia, to the Caribbean, to US and Canada, so that you have a sense of how we're organized here. So if Cora would speak, please, and then Hedvig in Antwerp, Belgium.
Carla, it looks like Cara is not, hasn't made it yet.
Okay.
They're making it for the family, but they'll be joining in just in a little bit. So we'll
we'll circle back. So Hedvig, can you go ahead, and then is Alf online from Germany?
Okay, hi, I am Hedvig Kras. I live in Antwerp, one of the biggest harbors in Europe. Last year, I heard that our local council started to build a new pontoon for cruise ships in the middle of our city. Right at the same time, I could no longer enter the city with my car because of new environmental regulations. Fair enough, I support clean air and climate action. But then I read the article of Transport and Environment about how polluting cruise ships are. And so I started a petition against them. And more than 16,000 people signed it in just 1 week. So I am here to speak for the people of Antwerp, and I'm very happy that there are so many activists around the globe who work towards the same clean air and clean water. In Amsterdam, they refuse to let cruise ships into the center. That's a good start. So let us make a very clear sign about a future and put a lot of pressure on cruise companies to not go back to normal after COVID-19, but to really change for the good. And I also want to mention workers' conditions. They are often very poor. We need fair practice now.
Thank you so much. We'll go now to Alf. And with all these screens, I can't see if he's online, but hopefully. And then Klaus in Norway after. Is Alf there? Klaus, I know you're on. How about if you jump in and we'll see if Alf comes in next.
Okay, yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Okay, my name is Klaus Jukerstein, and I live close to 3 ports, cruise ports, in the Fjord district, among them the city of Bergen. If it hadn't been for the pandemic, Bergen would this year have been visited by 360 cruise ships with 700,000 passengers, 100,000 more than last year. I moderate the page Ending Sweatship Exploitation in the Cruise Industry on Facebook and do welfare work for the employees on cruise ships. We offer them a place to rest and free internet to contact their families. The non-profit is annually visited by about 10,000 cruise ships workers. I have met many of them and heard their stories of what life is like aboard. For many, it is a floating head. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Klaus. Alf, are you there? We'll circle back around. Let's go to the UK, to Cara, and then to Christelle, Dr. Christelle Blunden.
Hi, I'm Cara from the home port city of Southampton in the UK. I'm from a seafaring family. My mum's parents worked on the Queen Mary and my dad's father was captain of the Andes. But the days when ships' crew came from this city are long gone. Claims of economic benefits to the local economy when a ship is in port are never explained. What most locals just get is traffic jams and poor air quality. During lockdown, with little road traffic, Southampton's air quality didn't improve as it did elsewhere. In fact, nitrogen dioxide levels were highest in April and May as the cruise ships began to return home, with levels dropping month by month as ships began anchoring off the Dorset coast to avoid paying the high port fees. We've already had nearly 600 ship visit days rather than the pre-COVID scheduled 446 for the whole year. As a member of Friends of the Earth, we've protested on World Oceans Day against the pollution, asking the port to urgently invest in shoreside power and for the ships to please turn their engines off. Right now, Southampton really is up ship creek. Thank you.
Thank you, Cara. We'll go to Dr. Christelle Blunden and then to Rob Higgs in Cornwall, UK.
Thank you, Cara. We're from the same port city, Southampton. I'm a general practitioner. I see the effects of air pollution on chronic diseases in my patients every day. I've been trying to keep as close an eye as possible on the cruise industry, especially during lockdown, and trying to put together as many researchers' efforts as I can about what the effects of cruise ships idling off of our coast may be on health during the lockdown. As yet unpublished, there is a paper about to come out in the European Journal of Respiratory Medicine demonstrating that the particulate matter the ultra-fine particulate matter emitted by the cruise ships has a much worse effect on bronchial cells than does other types of particulate matter. Although we are as yet unable to quantify exactly how much of our air pollution here in Southampton is as a result of that. The other work that I'm doing, because I couldn't help it, because it's a human rights abuse crisis, is looking into the conditions for unrepatriated workers during lockdown, also on the ships that are idling in our bays. And similarly to what other speakers have said, we have people here who can't get back to see their families, who aren't being paid, who aren't able to see their children. And what is more, reports that we've had from people stuck on the ships themselves that the cruise ship owners are blocking the websites of their unions, including the International Maritime Organization and the Seafarers Association. Seafarers.org appear to be doing brilliant work to help a lot of these people, but some of the workers have reported that they can't access these websites due to them being blocked. So we're trying to reach out to them. We've tried to reach out to the unions as well. And we're also planning a creative action whereby we're going to sail a boat and we're going to wave kites in the air with the details of the phone numbers and email addresses of the unions, so that people, and we're going to spread that news in the media so that people become aware and the ship owners aren't just getting away with this. That's it from me.
Thank you very much, Christelle. We'll go next to Rob in Cornwall, and then we're going to jump across the globe to Australia and Steve.
Hello, yeah, I'm Rob Higgs, down in Falmouth, Cornwall, UK. We're just sort of starting an offshoot of Extinction Rebellion called Ocean Rebellion, with similar demands, but focused on the ocean. And currently our first target was the cruise industry, largely because we've got the World, which is the biggest residentially owned, pardon me, multi-millionaire ship cruise liner in the harbour. So we got ourselves a cinema projector, and we were projecting images onto the hull of that, which got really good international coverage. So keen to pursue that further, particularly with a view to hassling our harbour, Falmouth Docks, AMP, into shore power, and to sort of work with the town council that's approved a climate emergency, but then also encouraging cruise liners, which we think are incongruous. So very keen to work with what you were just saying, Christelle, was it? To say we could come and project that. We were heading to Weymouth and Southampton next to sort of target the cruise liners there, so we could definitely bring our setup and project the numbers onto the hull, which the media seems very keen on those images. So yeah, creative actions to try to bring media attention for public awareness is our sort of route and how to do that.
Thank you so much, Rob. You can see the networking goes on anytime we get in touch with each other. So let's jump across the world to the Gold Coast in Australia, and Steve, and then Maria in Sydney will speak with us.
Thanks, Carla. My name's Steve Gratian, and I'm based on the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia. For the past 18 years, I've been a member of the community action group called the Save Our Spit Alliance. The Gold Coast is a city of 650,000 residents. It's a popular domestic and international tourist destination situated in the subtropics on the Pacific Ocean. The Gold Coast is famous for its clean, world-class beaches and its surfing, boating, diving, sailing, fishing, wildlife and whale watching activities. Since 1986, various cruise port proposals for the Gold Coast have been pushed by governments, developers and the cruise industry. Despite the fact that we have no natural deep water or protected harbour or any lagoons or islands or reefs to protect our shores from the full power of the Pacific Ocean or the summer cyclone season. So far, the community here has kept the cruise industry out of the Gold Coast by revealing their appalling record of ecological and environmental damage. We've also researched and exposed the navigational safety issues, engineering obstacles, and the business case against hosting cruise ships on the Gold Coast. During this process, we've witnessed the industry's lies and misrepresentations to the media and the public. To date, we've had 0 cruise ship visits on the Gold Coast. Our local major demand is that the Mayor of the Gold Coast permanently abandons his current proposal to construct a cruise terminal on a public park and surf beach on the Spit, and also the cancellation of the associated pier jutting 1 nautical mile out to sea into humpback whale resting sites and migratory paths. That's our current issue, and with the help of the network, we'll be fighting that.
Thank you so much, Steve. We'll go now to Maria in Sydney, and then Jamie with International Cruise Victims is up next.
Hello, my name is Maria Poulos, and I represent a community group, Save the Bay Coalition, that has been working for the last few years to stop the development of a new mega cruise ship terminal in the historic and culturally significant Yarra Bay and Botany Bay, Sydney. Now, although Sydney has 2 mega cruise ship terminals in the heart of the city already and polluting the heart of the city, the cruise industry, led by Royal Caribbean, has been lobbying the government for many years now to transform this pristine, sacred bay for its mega cruise ships. And they've used their influence with leaders to push for this unsustainable expansion of their operation in Sydney. We already have 350 to 400 cruise ships a year. All of this without consulting the frontline communities and the traditional owners of the land. Instead, they have created a smokescreen and propagated false information about local economic benefits. And we have been fighting to stop this, but to also educate people about the true costs of this scheme. Now, with the onset of COVID-19, Sydney saw a nightmare scenario unfold. In April, Royal Caribbean and Ruby Princess were linked to a significant COVID-19 cluster that resulted in hundreds of passengers and crew contracting COVID-19 and at least 28 deaths, and many we probably will never know. Now, Princess Cruises is now the subject of a police criminal investigation for misleading authorities about the situation and a class action. Adding to the chaos that it was inflicted on our city by the cruise industry, more than a dozen cruise ships were anchored off the coast of Australia with 15,000 international crew and more than 50 nations stranded and drifting around the Australian coastline. It was a humanitarian crisis in the making, with the cruise industry failing to protect the health, safety, and dignity of its workers. We worked very hard with the unions to demand that the industry support repatriation and or the continued payment of wages and benefits. Now, finally, with the Australian ban on cruising due to expire in very shortly, I think at the end of September, the cruise industry is lobbying furiously now for an early resumption of cruising. But Australia will not be the ground zero of the resumption of cruising, of unsustainable cruising. Australians are now joining other port communities around the world, and we're demanding that the cruise industry consider radical change before it can resume sailing. 1, no more port development, save Yarra Bay. 2, a commitment to robust health protocols and risk management plans. A big no to sailing during a pandemic. And 3, please, no return to business as usual. The industry must commit to the common sense principles that we have developed, the principles of responsible cruise tourism. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. And thanks for being in tomorrow at 5 in the morning or so. We're going to jump back to, we're going to go, to Jamie with International Cruise Victims. And after, we're going to jump back to Europe, to Copenhagen, Denmark. And Cora is on.
Hi, I'm Jamie Barnett. I'm with International Cruise Victims, which is an organization that was formed almost 15 years ago now by 4 families who, having lost loved ones, members of their families on a cruise vacation, somehow managed to come together to find each other and become a collective voice for those who have been victimized by the cruise industry. Turns out there's a rather large number of us out there in the world. And we at ICV represent passengers and crew worldwide who have been victims of crimes such as sexual assault. Approximately 34% of those having been committed against minors is something that the public really needs to be aware of, but the cruise line doesn't want you to be aware of. And those who have disappeared, there have been unsolved disappearances, suspicious deaths, substandard medical care, fires, ships that run aground, murky jurisdictional and legal issues that ships sailing under flags of convenience creates, and many other kinds of tragic occurrences experienced by those who unknowingly relinquish so many of their rights and protections by just deciding to take a cruise vacation, which is what they consider to be the trip of a lifetime. But ICV quickly grew and went on to seek legislation in the, for reform of the cruise industry. In 2010, our efforts were rewarded as the Cruise Vessel Security and Safety Act was passed into law, providing the first steps in regulated passenger and crew protection. But there's so much more to be done. We've been terribly concerned, quite naturally, over the fact that the cruise industry, having been complicit in the spread of COVID-19, is going to try to sell the world some kind of snake oil of certain safety protocol in order to return to sailing again. So toward that end, we've written the two CEOs of Royal Caribbean and NCL and sent them registered letters asking for a seat at their panel of experts table, supposedly hired to come up with satisfactory guidelines for reselling. But so far, surprise, surprise, we've not heard from them. So now our work really begins in earnest, and we are so glad at ICV to be a part of this coalition, because I truly believe that together we are stronger, and together we can do all this work that we've got lying ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jamie, for all of your work. We're going to go now to Cora in Copenhagen and then jump across the world again, the oceans, to Sam in Bahamas.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I apologize. Thank you very much. I apologize. I don't have any picture. There were some technical issues. But to be short, my name is Cora Brask Christensen. I work as Senior Advisor on Air Quality and Climate in Green Transition Denmark. My key focus is traveling around the world, measuring air pollution from cruise ships and other pollution sources. And of course, we try to solve the challenge by promoting shore power for cruise ships when they're in port and air pollution control equipment when they are not in port. And I just want to show a short movie illustrating what I see when I was in, or what I saw when I was in Greenland measuring air pollution. And Greenland is one of the most unspoiled places on this planet. And hopefully the computer will work. Here we have what I saw or witnessed in Greenland. What we see now is the yellow brownish smoke from a cruise ship. That is the sulfur burning. First main engine is on. Now you see second main engine. It will start now. This is the black carbon contributing a lot to health issues and to global warming, especially in the Arctic. Black carbon is more toxic than average particles, and much of this is measured as ultrafine particles that we already heard about, contributing a lot to health issues in port areas. I think this movie probably tells more than 1,000 words, so I'll stop now for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and for that, for your work and the powerful video footage. Now we'll head to Bahamas to Sam, and then to Kaiman and Linda. Sam, are you muted?
Okay, I think I'm good now.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'm from the Bahamas. I'm with an organization named Re-Earth. For 30-odd years, we've been dealing with a lot of different issues here, but in the last 2 years, we've been actually working toward trying to get Disney Cruise Lines to go away from a beautiful spot in Eleuthera, the Bahamas, which has been proposed as a marine protected area. Disney submitted their EIA over 8 months ago. The public has not seen a word of it. We continue to remain in the dark over it. We would really like, going forward, that the government of the Bahamas undertake an environmental impact assessment on the entire cruise industry in the country to determine whether or not how we should go forward, if at all. We would like to address the issue of flags of convenience. There's been a number of incidents where we've known that cruise ships have dumped in our waters and we've done absolutely nothing in terms of getting them to pay for it. So we would like in the Bahamas, we have, I think, 7 different private cruise ports, and according to the Ministry of Tourism statistics, 75% of our tourism are cruise ship passengers, but they only account for 11% of the tourism revenue. So in a private cruise port, the earnings for the host country are even less. So we would also like a ban on any more private cruise ports, and absolutely in terms of their general function moving forward, that they really need to clean up their act and do better. Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thank you for being a part of this group.
Thank you so much, Sam. We're going to go now to Linda in Cayman, and then Gordon Kirkwood, if he's on, and if he isn't on, we'll jump to Key West and Evan. Gordon's preparing for a hurricane.
Thanks, Carla. Hi, I'm Linda Clark from the Cayman Islands. We are in the Caribbean. We're a very small island port. We're 76 square miles. And we've recently had the cruise lines, namely Carnival and Royal Caribbean, collaborating with our government to put in a giant mega ship dock. We currently do have ships. We get 1.9 million per year of passengers, with 600 ships per year. And due to COVID, we don't have anyone at the moment. We so far have stopped the dock from being started without public consultation. A local group called Cruise Support Referendum Cayman, CPR Cayman, has a petition that did succeed in getting enough signatures to take it to a people's initiated referendum. We are still waiting for the local government to honor that referendum, to hold the referendum and have it. So far, we have not been told we will have that, and now there is a pause in cruise tourism. We have been told by the government that the project is on hold. However, we do know the cruise industry will likely want to get back as soon as possible. They've already started asking for people to book cruises to the Cayman Islands, and they don't even have the permission from the government to dock here. So at the moment, we don't have any cruise ships coming until at least January. We will see what happens. There's several groups, there's youth groups involved in this, and there's, because youth can't vote, so they're also represented through other groups. Some of them are on this call. Protect Our Future is one of those groups. Cruise Port Referendum Cayman is aimed at people who can vote in the Cayman Islands, but there's also other advocates as well, such as the National Trust, who can also be non-Caymanians objecting to this degradation in quality of life, the mass tourism, the loss of our natural ecosystems in Georgetown Harbor.
Thank you, Linda. Gordon, are you on? He was going to see if he could take a pause from shuttering things up. If no, Gordon, we'll jump on to Evan in Key West, Florida, and then to Carrie in Charleston, South Carolina.
Hi, I'm Evan Haskell in Key West, Florida. I represent the Key West Committee for Safer, Cleaner Ships. Key West is a small town with a population of just 25,000 citizens, but we see over 400 ships and a million passengers a year last year, with even more forecasted for the 2020 period, pre-pandemic, of course. Here in Key West, we're lucky to have a robust tourist economy, like I've heard from some others on the call, outside of cruising. According to the cruise industry's own figures, cruise visits in Key West account for just 8% of our tourism spending, but they disembark a full 50% of our annual visitors. Here in Key West, we have just 150 hospital beds in the surrounding area. The furthest of those being an hour-and-a-half drive away. The next closest hospital facilities are going to be in Miami, which is over 150 miles away, and a full 3-hour drive. Due to our limited infrastructure and health capacity, the Key West Committee for Safer, Cleaner Ships began a petition and referendum initiative to restrict the size of cruise ships and passenger counts in Key West. We successfully gathered 2,500 signatures, almost doubling the required amount to place our item on the November ballot. Those signatures have been certified, and the local clerk of court has ruled that they will go on that November ballot. Because we're also in a national marine sanctuary with the only living coral reef in the continental United States, we also are seeking to give preference to the cruise lines with the best environmental and health records. So within this group, we find ourselves falling in the right of self-determination. The citizens of Key West strongly support our referendum, and we expect to pass overwhelmingly in November. In the meantime, we've been challenged in federal court in the Southern District of Florida, where we defeated the opposition, and Judge Lawrence King affirmed the rights of voters to have their vote. The efforts to eliminate our referendum from the ballot continue in state court. Recent decision to deny this effort in state court has been successfully asked to be reconsidered, so we have more hearings on this topic next week. We continue to be confident in the rights of our citizens to have their vote, and that is the main focus of our campaign right now, is to keep this item on our November ballot and let our voters speak on the issue. I kind of glossed over it, but what we're doing is we're seeking to amend the city charter of Key West to place these limits on the size and frequency of cruise traffic in our delicate location. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Evan. Let's go to South Carolina to Carrie, and then we're going to jump across the North American continent to British Columbia and Mark Gardner.
My name is Carrie. Yeah, there we go. I'm Carrie Agnew, and I'm one of the founders and the executive director for the grassroots nonprofit Charleston Communities for Cruise Control. We go by C4. Since 2011, we've been working with local environmental and preservation groups, as well as neighborhood associations, to obtain legally binding regulations on the cruise ship industry here, a better site for a proposed much larger cruise ship terminal currently slated for the heart of the historic district in downtown Charleston, and the establishment of a cruise ship code of conduct, which asks that ships and their passengers recognize they are operating in a very residential, small, historic city on the National Registry of Historic Places, and also the #1 tourist destination in the United States for the past 9 years. Charleston was made a home port for Carnival Cruise Lines in 2010, and since that time, we've seen a tremendous drop in the quality of life for residents, and the delicate balance between that and tourism has been lost. Pre-COVID, we were expected just about 270,000 cruise passengers here this year. Litigation began in 2012, is now ongoing once again, having had the state Supreme Court grant our legal standing, which had previously been denied. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Marg, and then we'll go to Adam in New York, and we're running long on time. We all have a lot to say. So I'd like to remind the journalists that they can ask questions via chat or save for the end. And if the rest of our speakers could try and speed up a little bit so we have time for questions, please.
Hi, I'm Marg. Am I on?
Yes.
I'm Marg Gardner from James Bay, Victoria on Vancouver Island. Our neighborhood with a population of 12,000 serves as a foreign port of call for the Seattle-based Alaskan Run. This year, 300 ships with 770,000 passengers were expected. Often that's 12,000 passengers in a day with up to 20,000 in a weekend. This overwhelms our small community, which is rather locked, as you can see from the map behind me. We only have a couple major roads in and out. COVID brought changes and challenges to all of us. For our community, it also brought the first summer in 14 years with clean ocean breezes. As our community became overwhelmed, our association took a 5-pillar approach. The Health Authority provided air quality study. We completed a resident survey, noise study, traffic volume study, and on multiple accounts for cost benefit assessment. The industry is not healthy for our community. To obtain social license, the industry must transform. It must become a good corporate citizen in our neighborhood. Before visits resume, our number one demand is that ship schedules be altered to minimize emissions and traffic surges. COVID-19 provides an opportunity for all of us to hit the reset button for this industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Marg. Let's go to Adam in New York City and then Jim in Bar Harbor, Maine. And we've got seven people left. And if we could just move it along quickly, please.
Thank you. I'm Adam Armstrong, living in Brooklyn, New York. I've been fighting cruise ship pollution for 15 years. I blog at A View from the Hook, and that's my Twitter handle too. And I represent Resilient Red Hook, which is an organization that was formed after Hurricane Sandy. The cruise ship terminal was built at the end of my residential street and 15 years ago. And the focus in our neighborhood has been to get these ships to plug into shore power. And for the neighborhood to benefit from the health benefits and also the climate benefits in a neighborhood that did go underwater during Hurricane Sandy and has a whole lot of public housing and kids with an asthma rate of 40%. Now, we did have some success a few years back. Shore power infrastructure was built. However, the cruise ships don't seem to be wanting to plug in. There's no enforcement mechanism, there's no monitoring. Carnival Corporation, which owns all the ships that are visiting Brooklyn currently or on pause right now, seems to just want to make their own choices about whether they'll actually plug in and use the zero emissions technology that we fought so hard to build. So this battle continues. There was a New York Times story at the beginning of this year that covered the battle that still continues in Brooklyn to plug cruise ships in. But however, my campaign and the campaign in our neighborhood also is focusing on creating shore power infrastructure throughout the ports of New York and New Jersey, the second largest in the United States. The shore power infrastructure in Brooklyn is actually the first on the East Coast of the United States. So, and we also support all of the issues that this group supports, all the many ways that the cruise ship industry is putting profits over people. And we hope that many of these issues will be addressed before the cruise industry is allowed to return to business as normal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adam. Jim O'Connell in Maine, and then Tyler in California, please.
Hi, I'm Jim O'Connell from Maine, and I'm an individual investigative researcher, just a regular citizen, but I've taken up over the past 3 years, 3 issues that have made a major impact on, and I've written papers on, and they've been confirmed by experts. The first one I want to mention is the right whales, 18 plus right whales, endangered species, critically endangered species now, were going to be wiped out by Carnival Corporation, who had killed 18 right whales, mowed them down at night up in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. I get that out there. It's been verified by the Department of Marine Resources, and it got in front of a judge 2 weeks ago, and they took the pressure off the lobster industry, who was being accused of wiping out the right whale species. Now it's on Carnival. Another issue, economics. I've studied the economics here in Bar Harbor. We have 200 ships and 200,000 visitors. I observed the ramp and counted 20,000 people, observed them and marked how many bags retail bags they carried. 1 in 5 carried a bag. So the stores were on the bags. I went to research what the people was in the bags. $1 in net profit per person who comes ashore. That's how much a passenger is worth to that town and their citizens in net profit. The businesses and the citizens of the town is what I concentrated on. $1 per passenger. You can count the passengers that come ashore and just multiply it by $1, and that's what they're giving to you. That's in port of calls. Now, the third issue was the pollution. I analyzed it according to semi-trucks, came up with 40,000 semi-trucks idling next to our town with one major ship. That I sent to the EPA. They did their own study. New York Times picked up on it, and they used it on their, about the ships not plugging in New York. And they came up with the exact same figures. 38,000, I think it was, idling semi-trucks. And that's all legal, 15 parts per million, 5 minutes, no more idling than 5 minutes at 15 parts per minute. And the cruise ships are doing 1,000 parts per million. That's how you get so many semi-trucks. And it's illegal. There are laws, there are fines for going over 5 minutes. Millions of dollars a day should be assessed. Okay, I will stop now.
Thank you so much. Jim is a wealth of information. Tyler in California, please, and then we're heading up the Pacific Coast to Elizabeth in Seattle, Washington.
Hello, Tyler Fox here. I reside in Monterey Bay, and our organization is Protect Monterey Bay. So we have cruise ships scheduled to come in here later this month already. And we have about 20 ships scheduled for 2021. These ships are plowing their way into our our environmental, one of the most beautiful places in California and the world, the Monterey Bay. It's a national marine sanctuary. And there has not been an environmental assessment report here as far as, the risk versus reward. We have over 30,000 concerned citizens that have signed a petition, and our city council, our local government, is just choosing to turn a blind eye to this issue. And I'm just thrilled that so many people are here together, and I'm hoping we can make some real change in the Monterey Bay. Thank you.
Okay, this journey around the world is almost over. We'll hear from Elizabeth in Seattle, and then Anna in Vancouver, and then I'll wrap it up in Alaska.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Burton in Seattle, Washington. Our local group is called Seattle Cruise Control. Seattle is the home port for almost half the cruises to Alaska. This year, we were due for 233 ship visits. All were canceled due to the pandemic. Seattle already has 2 cruise terminals. Our elected port commissioners plan to build a 3rd. We oppose this for multiple reasons. I'll highlight our climate concerns in the call for zero-emission ships. Each year, over 500,000 people fly to Seattle to go on cruises. During the 6-month cruise season, the airplane flights plus the cruise ships generate almost 2 million tons of greenhouse gases. This is almost 1/3 as much as the entire city of Seattle emits in an entire year. We need to radically reduce global emissions as quickly as possible to avoid irreversible devastation. This is not the time to build infrastructure that locks in decades of a non-essential climate-destroying business. For the record, liquefied natural gas is no better for the climate than heavy fuel oil. Cruise ships are also a threat to our resident orca whales who are on the brink of extinction. We support all of the principles for responsible cruise tourism. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Anna in Vancouver, and then I'm on.
Hi, my name's Anna, and I'm on unceded Coast Salish territory of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, also known as Vancouver. I'm here to join in and support community efforts around the world. My local cruise terminal would have seen more than 1 million people come through and over 300 sailings in 2020 if it weren't for Canada's stop on cruise ships. More astoundingly, based on research I did with my organization, Stand Earth, cruise ships off my coast would have dumped more than 13,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools worth of water pollution. Most of that, more than 95%, would have been absolutely preventable scrubber wash water laden with cancer-causing chemicals and heavy metals. The principles for responsible tourism help us to look to the future and how we can bring responsibility to this sector.
Thank you, Anna. And I'm Carla Hart. I live in Juneau, Alaska, and I've been working on the cruise industry or watching the cruise industry for over 35 years. And local control of the cruise industry is vitally important, whether it's at a community level or a state level. And many of us have worked for many decades on different issues. The bringing together the network and the principles of responsible cruise tourism, I think, is critical for us to start to have some control in all of our communities around the world. So we are now up to 4 minutes to the hour, and if I've missed anyone on our list, I apologize sincerely, but we need to move on to questions. For anybody who hasn't seen the link, Global Cruise Activist Network, all one word, .com, will get you to our principles of responsible tourism and some more information. And we'll be building out that website as all of us as volunteers get information in. So thank you very much. And I'd like to turn it over to Jane for questions.
Do any of the journalists that are on this Zoom have some questions? The idea was that you'd raise your hand, but there's 5 screens of people, so I won't see anybody with their hand raised. So just shout in your turn, put yourself off mute and say if you have a question, or in the chat.
I have a question.
I have a question.
I have a question too.
Okay. Mark NY Cannon,
Yes,
XRTV.
Mark Cannon.
Introduce yourself before you talk.
Sure. It's Extinction Rebellion Television, Victoria, BC. Will be debuting in October on a weekly basis. The reason I'm piping up here is because I find it interesting the impact the pandemic, of course, has had in slowing down and putting to a stop the cruise industry in so many ports. Have you seen around the world the reaction of people in your communities become really happy about that because they're seeing clean water, for instance, or in clean air, for instance, as opposed to just the economic drawbacks to some elements in the community?
Maria in Sydney, would you like to take that? And then we'll get somebody from Europe.
Jane Markin.
Okay, Maria wanted to say something.
Oh, just to say that absolutely, we have seen most people in my city of Sydney actually, are very pleased that we have a ban on cruising because the air quality has improved. We've had less traffic and congestion around our ports. And something very interesting happened in my group alone. Our membership grew exponentially with all the publicity around, the impacts of, the failure to follow health protocols and what that meant for the spread of COVID has brought a lot of people to our movement. And a lot of people now are writing to us basically saying, please fight this, fight for shore power, fight for responsible cruise tourism. So it has had a positive effect.
Mark?
Yeah.
Mark,
Hi, Mark. I don't know you, Mark Gardner, James Bay. I think I've heard, and from downtown businesses and from locals, is how wonderful the clean air is. That has been the biggest effect that I have heard in a positive way. Because we have so much construction going on in James Bay, the traffic is a mess anyway. But I think our whole city is now so overcome by crime and thievery and guns and knives because of our situation with 200 living in our streets of James Bay. So we have, we're going to get back to it because when the ships start coming, people will realize really quickly how a few thousand people coming ashore, the possibility of COVID, especially given the experience of Australia and other countries who are now receiving the ships again and getting reintroductions of COVID. Thank you.
Was there somebody else with something?
Yes, can I speak for a second?
Be quick, Jim.
Yep, the right whales are tickled. There's no deaths in the Gulf of St. Lawrence this year.
Thank you for that. Another question, please.
Hi, this is Michael Giuliano with Tradewinds. I just had a few questions about the about your organization, GCAN, GCAN. May you tell me who founded this and why?
So I'd like Carla to answer that because she's our fairy godmother.
Never been called that before. Yes, I have worked on cruise ship issues locally and trying to organize statewide for years. The impacts of the shore excursions, interestingly, are what really tweaks me because I live under a helicopter flight path with helicopter tours. And last summer, I decided to try to organize some sort of an international in-person conference to bring us together to meet. And so we started working towards that, and I reached out to some other folks that I found online. Obviously, COVID changed our plans for an international in-person conference and sort of sent us into the world of Zoom. And we started reaching out, and the more of us we found through the snowball sampling effect of reaching out, we've been connecting people. So it's really a very grassroots. One of our other main founders who was working with me on the conference is in Maine, and she works in a hotel and is busy with the pandemic, so hasn't been able to join us today. But
who's that person?
Her name is Ruth, and she works in a small hotel, and I'm very bad with names. Jane, do you remember Ruth's last name? I can send it to you.
Ruth, hello, it's Ruth Starr.
Ruth Starr, thank you.
Yes, and she's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, so she, I think Jim put me in touch with Ruth because I had found Jim's posts online. Yes. So we have some help with GCAN, sort of technical help from people who are participating in our organization, giving us technical help. But thanks to the miracle of Zoom, for $15 a month, I pay for a membership, and we've been using Zoom from a nonprofit that we're affiliated with in terms of getting technical help. But we started out with my $15 a month Zoom subscription, and I have a huge aversion to forming nonprofit organizations and to having a hierarchical. We're a network. Our purpose is to exchange information, not to come up with, to exchange information and find places that we want to work together on. And then
some things have already, it's just a short space of time and the network keeps growing and new issues get introduced by the new people that join the network every week. But already some things have happened because somebody has an issue with noise pollution, and Carla in Juneau dealt with that a couple of decades ago, and so she could give them guidelines of how to tackle the regulations and the monitoring, etc., for how to construct a case against so much noise pollution, right?
Right, and likewise, Evan with his ballot initiative in Key West, I'm looking at very closely. And I think that across the globe, we're all learning from each other and building. And in terms of who our members are, we're members who are concerned about, as you can see, all different aspects of the cruise industry. We don't have a membership in sense of anybody pays any money or anything like that. It's people who are committed to working together constructively to try to make a difference and share information. And I expect, hopefully after our launch, that we'll get a lot more people who want to participate. We meet every couple weeks on Zoom. and communicate that way.
What does GCAN hope to achieve? And how do you plan to do that?
Well, that's the great thing about a network is, as a network, I think that we have all agreed that we'd like to see these principles of responsible tourism adopted by the industry. But we're a network that we hope to achieve power for all of our members to be able to respond to the cruise industry so that we have strength in knowledge and in information, well, in knowledge to be able to address issues and to address the industry, as you know, is so hierarchical and it's so consolidated now that they have a big picture of what's going on. And all of us in communities have been working individually and learning from scratch each time something comes up in your community. And now we have a way to exchange information.
Sure. Is there anyone backing GCAN, such as any NGOs or companies, for any funding that you may need for your, your cause?
No.
We wish we could have the backing of the sovereign Saudi funds of Carnival or the banks that are bailing out the cruise industry. Our power is in our connections to each other, and that's we're doing our best. And regarding the overall principles, we in each port city there might be a different issue that's more critical than another issue, but the idea is ultimately that it's the cruise companies that are going to change what they do and how they do it without changing the planet too much in the process.
Sure. Have you reached out to any of the cruise companies to try to engage them in this?
Of course we have, right at the beginning of this. And also individually, I can speak for Venice, where we regularly try to engage and dialogue with the Port Authority or the representatives of the cruise companies, and they've refused to meet directly, and it's something that's shared by many of the other community representatives in this network. And we would welcome the chance to have the cruise companies, they could have joined this Zoom. Let's pause a minute. Is there anybody from the cruise industry on the Zoom right now?
Right. Ma'am, who are you? I know there's Carla Hart was one of the people talking to me, but who are you?
My name's Jane Damosto and I'm from We're Here Venice.
Oh, okay, great, thanks. Okay.
Any more questions?
Hi, it's Wendy here from the Cayman Islands, Cayman News Service.
How do you do, Wendy? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Jane.
You've gone, yeah, you went mute for a minute. Now we can hear you. No, we can't.
Eleanor Garley from eTurbo News.
Okay.
Hi, I'm in New York. I've been trying to shed light on the atrocities of the cruise line industry for many years through eTurbo News and other and social network. We fortunately are global in scope and have over 1.3 million global readers. And the publisher is very favorable to shedding light on the industry, if you will. Is there, and all of your programs are really extraordinary and the information is very enlightening. Is there any bulletin board or any website where you all collect and deposit, if you will, the information that's coming and the programs that you're running?
Yes. We have, there's a Facebook group, and as of today, there's a website now where we're going to gather everything
So
together.
everything will be collated on that one website with links to your own organizations and your leadership of the organizations. Is that going to all be in one deposit? in one website?
To the extent that we're an all-volunteer organization, and I know that I have to-do lists that don't always get done as promptly as I want, yes, our intent is to pull everything together into one location, but we are a network and we don't have control over any other person in our network or what they do or don't get done.
Well, the objective then is for all of you in the network to post at least your links to your websites or to the leadership of your organization. So those of us in the media that are looking for data will be able to find a source. Because right now, and I've been researching this area, the industry for years, and most of you are very new to me. So that your actions and your activities are not reaching the media. And they're not reaching the consumer because your websites or whatever.
Likewise, the people that you know who we don't know, please point them in the direction
absolutely.
of the network.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
When I was in Venice doing a story, it would have been perfect because I did, a couple of stories on Venice. Had I known about the organization in Venice, it would have been a good opportunity for me, as in the person who's from Burton, and I'm in New York.
Question: is there somebody? How about the Cayman Islands CNS? Wendy? Can you connect now with your question? Cayman News Service. They're having a storm now.
I keep getting muted, unmuted. I don't know why. That's what the problem is. It's not me that's doing it. There's some automatic mute system going on. Anyway, very briefly, the question simply is about how you hope to get the cruise industry to adopt these principles, and what channels do you think you're going to have to use to get, I mean, you say that you've reached out to them directly, they're not responding, they're unlikely to. What other tricks do you have up your sleeve as an organization that you can get these principles adopted? Because they do seem to be very common problems across all ports. It isn't one problem. The problems are very, very similar. So
I'd like to pass that question to Christelle, who has some thoughts on this. Christelle, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Well, I wish I had some thoughts on how to get them to adopt all of the principles, but along with our Extinction Rebellion group, we launched a protest last year when they sponsored an event when Carnival sponsored an event in our city centre called Seaside in the City, during which they put fake sand all over the Guildhall Square. Why? Because they robbed us of our beaches. And we actually got on stage and we pointed out the hypocrisy of this. We also stood outside their HQ with hazard tape and forensic suits and said, this is a crime scene. Often it takes creative action like that to get somebody's attention. And of course, we did quite a lot of damage to their reputation, given that their headquarters are in Southampton, and we got a meeting with the president within 4 days. And at least they listened to what our demands were and engaged with us and discussed those with us as to what they were doing and what they thought was reasonable and what wasn't reasonable. And of course, our aim was to get them to go further in every respect. So I would suggest, if you want a meeting with them, you actually probably have to go and see something a little bit outside of the ordinary, perhaps, to get attention.
The other thing is that without this network, people can do specific things in their specific locations. Thanks to the network, we can plan to do initiatives in parallel in all different places around the world or in regions of the world. So, for example, the cruise ships that aren't coming to Venice have gone to Trieste. If there was a similar movement in Trieste, which it is actually forming now, the cruise ships will be put off to the same extent that they were put off of coming to Venice in going to Trieste. And it's up to I just think it's crazy sometimes when the questions are put to us about, how do you think the cruise ships are going to respond? It's up to them to start noticing what they're doing to the world and how they're ruining other people's lives. Is there somebody else with a question from a media organization?
Jane, I'm going to jump in and point out that on our new website, thecruiseactivistnetwork.com, there is a map, an interactive map, where we're bringing together links and information about different groups and ports around the world. So that is a compilation that will be on the way.
Okay, and there's a comment here from Carrie Agnew in Charleston, who has a long experience. Do you want to say what you wrote in the comments, Carrie, please?
I'll just say that we've spent the past 11 years, 12 years, writing letters to Carnival, trying to get their attention, to their entire board, to our state ports authority, to their board, and no response. With all the litigation, I think that what we've realized is that when it comes to sort of addressing the problem that Adam referenced in New York with shore power, we have to get our state ports authority to mandate that the cruise ships use it as something. The hard part is that we are in litigation, so it's hard for me to talk about, but the change has to come from the top, and that's tough going. But that's why we're back in court. We now have legal standing, and so we're going back on the state level again.
Regarding the network and how we came together spontaneously, I'd like to now introduce Jim Ace, who facilitated the website and the logo. Jim, can you explain the logo? Because I think that's a really strong story.
Yeah, sure, happy to. Very briefly. If you've seen the logo, you'll notice it consists of 2 flags, and these are international maritime nautical signal flags. They all represent a different letter and a meaning, a very specific meaning. The K flag represents, forgive me, K is kilo, and it means I wish to communicate with you. And the L flag, this one, Lima, is you should stop your vessel instantly. And so we see this as both our logo, but also as our core message. And it really couldn't be more clear than this. I wish to communicate with you. You should stop your vessel instantly. Thanks, Jane.
Thank you, Jim. We're going to wrap up this meeting today. I want to say thank you to everyone for attending, the journalists and all the GCAN members for sharing just a small part of their work and local focus. It's another reminder of the power and potential we have when we come together to address the global problems caused by the global cruise industry. This is just the beginning. We have an ambitious program of actions and intentions to improve information sharing and coordinate actions. And you'll be hearing again from us again soon. Make sure that you've left your name and contact information if you didn't get an email directly from us, so that we can compile that, because members all around the world, we're sending out our press release to local journalists. And you can visit our website at globalcruiseactivistnetwork.com and find our global principles. And with that, we thank you all very much for joining us today. And yeah, thank you. Goodbye, everyone around the world.
Bye.
Thank you, Carla. Bye. Bye, Janet.
Bye.
Bye.
See you in a couple of weeks.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.